open the box, and here we have the charger and the cable that goes with the charger and a toolkit. So you take those out and put them to the side. Take out the phone, then take the scooter out of the box. So this is the scooter. You're gonna unfold the scooter by pressing down on that. The little, yeah, you see the bar fell into there. Now you can lock the bar closed with this one. You can put the kickstand down and the handlebar. There's an adjustment screw that you can tighten it or loosen so that it adjusts the distance between the inner tube over inside of there and this outer part of the handlebar too. So if the handlebar is not able to open, then you can tighten the screw so that it doesn't bang on the handlebar. When the handlebar is folded, you should be able to lift it up and then the sleeve should fall into place. If not, then you can readjust that screw inside of there with the Allen key. Put all of the handle, brake lever, the buttons, and the throttle into the desired position and then tighten them with the bolts. You should be able to look at the throttle while you're riding the scooter, standing on the scooter. You can adjust the height of the handlebar by pressing this button and then sliding the handlebar up and down. And this also has to be loose, but after you finish adjusting it, you tighten this lever by tightening this nut and then closing this lever. This is what our handlebar looks like after we adjusted and tightened all of the instrumentation. Next, we can look at the brakes to check if the cable is being held tightly. This is a mechanical disc brake. Make sure that this bolt is tightly holding this cable so that when you press the brake lever, the cable is able to pull the brake caliper lever so that it presses the brake caliper against both sides of the brake rotor. So we check the brakes for the front and back of the scooter. This has two mechanical disc brakes, one in the front, one in the back. Make sure to take note of which brake lever, right or left, controls which brake caliper, front and back. On this particular scooter, the right brake lever is controlling the front brake. You have to take note of this, and if you want to switch it, you can also switch it by loosening the brake, taking the cable out of this and switching them to the other side. And now we check the tightness of the brakes one at a time. First we're going to check the front brake while standing still. The scooter is not moving yet. And we check the back brake. Make sure that the back wheel doesn't move. And we just do this initial test before an actual high-speed test, just to make sure everything is at first sight in good condition. Check the tightness of the steering mechanism by holding the front wheel still by putting your 2 feet on either side and then trying to steer the scooter to see if it's loose from the front wheel. If there's too much wiggling, or if the steering is loose, then you can tighten the steering by tightening all of the points where between the steering mechanism and the tube. This scooter in particular has a tube that goes from the front wheel into this tube, which we tighten with these bolts and these bolts. And then it also has an upper tube that goes into this middle tube, which we tighten with this clamp. So for the next thing, let's turn on the scooter, make sure it can turn on. This scooter has a light switch. Make sure your lights, your front and back lights are working. Make sure the horn is working. Make sure that you can raise up the scooter, put the kickstand down, and raise it onto the kickstand, and check when you press the throttle if the scooter moves. This scooter has the pedal assist system on, so the throttle will not work from a stopped start. The throttle will only work if the wheel of the scooter is already moving. Check if the scooter is waterproof by looking for any holes where water can leak into the instrumentation, which is usually all down here. In this particular scooter, the battery and the controller are inside of here. So we check, there's one hole here that rainwater can leak down this cable and go into the deck through this hole. So we plug in this hole with some silicone material or some other kind of stopping material like glue. Now we can look at all the other bolts on the scooter and make sure they're all tight. This scooter has deck bolts, suspension bolts, brake caliper holding bolts. Check every single bolt on the scooter and mark it after you've tightened it with a permanent marker. You can re-tighten all the bolts and add thread locking material before you put the bolts back in to make sure that they'll stay tight after you tighten them. Do that for all the bolts on the whole scooter, including these. So after we tighten a bolt and perhaps added thread lock to it, then we put a mark on it so that we remember that we already tightened that bolt. Usually the displays and buttons that come with the scooter are already pretty water resistant, but if not, if you want to be extra careful, you can cover them with a plastic bag while you're riding them in the rain. And finally, you want to take the scooter out for a ride and make sure that you can stop using your brakes from full speed. Make sure that the suspension is tight enough so that when you get on the scooter, the scooter doesn't go too low. Otherwise, you can use your adjustments to tighten the suspension on the scooter. This particular scooter has some nuts that you might be able to tighten the suspension.